All right, welcome back after a holiday break. Tonight we're going to be tying the pheasant tail nymph that I had up there a moment ago. Let me switch back. There it is. It's basically two materials, peacock curl and pheasant tail fibers. So you should have a large pheasant tail feather. I just moved my vise. I'll check that in a second. And you should have some peacock curl. You should also have a little bit of copper wire. Your hook should be size 10 and 12. We'll start with the larger, the size 10. See, and that still looks fine. So as Joe mentioned a moment ago, you guys are just going to watch me tie this first one. We'll get the thread started on there. Cover the hook back to the bend. This is a rather large hook, so I'm not going to try to do this all with one group of feathers or fibers off this feather. So when you're working with when you're working with pheasant tail, let me switch back to that camera. What you want to do is pull these fibers towards the butt of the feather, and they'll peel right off. And you want the feathers with these nice kind of dead looking faded brown ends. Those are the good ones. You know, as you get up here into these thinner feathers and fibers, you don't really want those. So you want these nice long fibers with those dead looking brown ends. This is a number 10 hook, and I've got probably 5 or 6 little tail fibers here. And you want that to be about half the length of the hook for your tail. So we're going to set that in right there. We'll give that a couple of ties.
Twist your hook.
Sorry, thank you.
Put it there. Welcome.
So there's that, and I'm going to leave that right there, and I'm going to actually use those same fibers to wrap the body. First, now I'm going to cut those out. I should have put the wire in first if I wanted to use those for the body, but I did not. That's okay. So we'll get a nice smooth thread base there. We'll take a few more fibers, nice long ones. Again, with a number 10 hook, I've got probably about 6 of those. And this white end, you'll see when you peel them off the stem of the feather, they have that white end. That's good for holding on to. So just remember that. It's not good for much else. So you're going to tie in the tips. Right back to that bend in the hook. We're going to move our thread up to about the middle of the hook. And we're going to start wrapping that body. This is those same pheasant tail fibers. Wrapping forward. I like to often put my finger on top and hold things so they don't unravel. Put a finger on top while I reach under and grab them. You get to the end, you're going to hold those in your right hand. Toss your thread over with your left. Trim those out. We've always taught you everything goes over the hook and away from you and over the hook and away from you as you wrap. a lot of people like to wrap this wire in the opposite direction. You see how fragile these are. This one's coming apart already. So that's why we wrap this in wire. It will hold these, protect these fibers, and your fly will
Which one are
last a
we
lot longer.
doing?
Recording in progress.
I'm on mute.
No, you're not.
Whoever that is joining us, if you can mute yourself, please.
Yeah, I'm working on it.
Hi, Larry. Thank you for muting and welcome to the party. So we'll wrap that wire. That's probably about 6 wraps on this number 10 hook. Now, the issue you create when wrapping things in the opposite direction is that now your thread's going to want to go the other way and loosen that material that you've just wrapped. So as you put your thread on there, you're going to want to hold this wire tight for those first couple of wraps and anchor it in good. And when you're cutting wire, well, you can helicopter this one off. Grab it down low and twist it around in a circle until it breaks. Now, the other option is if you're going to cut the wire, in order to helicopter, you have to have your thread nice and tight on it. So hopefully you guys can do that. But if you're going to cut wire with your scissors, cut way down deep in the V like so, and not with the tips up here. All right, so that's our body section. We're going to move on now to the thorax. And this is going to require another bunch of these same fibers. I'd like to take 6 or 8. So we're going to use this for a wing casing and also for some wings. Let me show you this other one again. So here you can see this finished one. And you can see the wing casing going down the back. I use my little bodkin here to point. You can see this wing casing going down the back. You can also see these fibers sticking out the sides. You have 3 or 4 on each side, and that's the same fiber. So we're going to lay it in there on top of the hook. We're going to then wrap our peacock curl, and then we'll fold these fibers forward and fold them back again as the wings. So you want to set these up with the right measurement. And should be just about to the back of your tail. And another thing I want to mention is when you're pulling these off of that feather, turn them out to the side first, and that'll actually line up all these tips. You see, so you pull it out to the side of the feather. Maybe I'll switch back to the other camera. As you're pulling these down, first pull them out to the side and grab them all there, and then those tips will be lined up for you. So I was saying you want this measured about to the back of the tail, and that's going to leave you, this proportion to come forward and about the same proportion to lay those wings back. This one proportion is the thing that always takes me the longest to get right when I'm, haven't tied this fly in a while. We're going to go right about there. You always lose a bit of length as you wrap it with the thread at the front. I don't know, that thread somehow seems to eat up some of those fibers. So now our thread's up there at the front. We're going to take, for this size hook, maybe 3 nice peacock curls. These are pretty thin. Maybe I'll take 4 just for kicks. So if you look closely at these feathers, these are a little wiggly, but you'll see that nice green shine at this end, which would be the natural end away from the bird. And this end that was attached to the bird really is just kind of black, and there's not a lot of that nice green shine to it here in contrast if I fold it over in half. So this is obviously the good end. That's the stuff you want to use. And really, you know, that first inch or so is really delicate and it's probably just going to break off if you try to use it. So let's get rid of that. Break off that first inch or so, and those natural tips are, well, they're not the natural tips anymore because you cut them, but they're where you're going to tie in. These wide ends, again, just remember those are always good for holding on to, not much else. Here's a trick I'm going to show you. You don't really want these sticking out the front, but it's a lot easier to get it started if you stick it out the front, then you pull it back. So you don't have to cut it. You don't waste any. But if you don't do it that way, it's difficult to get them latched onto your hook. Your thread just kind of pushes them out of the way. So now you're going to want to lift this up and have a look. Now this is going to determine your proportions between your body on the back half and your thorax up here on the front half. So you want to wrap that thread back to just the right spot near the middle of the hook and come up here just, oh, 1/8 inch behind the eye or so. We're going to start wrapping this thorax. And I forgot Mike Mott's nice trick to keep these all together. I'll show you guys on the next one. I like to give you these little teasers so you don't get ahead of me on the next one. Something to watch out for. So we're going to anchor that down real good. Whoops. Apparently I didn't anchor them down real good because they broke. That's okay. So you might have noticed I broke those instead of cutting them. For some reason, they didn't break right. And again, breaking those, like I said, with helicoptering the wire, it works best if you got a real nice tight thread on there. If your thread's loose or anything's, you know, not very tight on there, you're gonna have issues like I just did there. Maybe something was loose. So now we bend that wing case forward, we hold it in our right hand, toss our thread over with the left. Now we're gonna split these. I said 6 or 8, so you're gonna take your 3 or 4. And you want these to bend kind of back. I like to go back towards the point of the hook a little bit. You know, they're not exactly just on the side of the fly. Kind of bend them back a little bit and give that a couple wraps. Bend the other half away from you. And I'll tilt this a little bit. I'll push those down. Well, these wings ended up a little higher than I like. Instead of pointing down at the point of the hook, that's okay. I'm going to rotate this a little. Well, this side's pointing down. And you can see how they're sticking out there on the sides. So that's about it. We can whip finish this. Oh. Sprung apart on me. It's kind of off to my side here to be better viewed through the camera. Now my thread's unraveling too. That's okay. You get to put a little head cement on there. Do like a little head cement along that wing case too. That's a fragile part of the fly. Got some fibers sticking out. I can see them on the camera better than I can with my eye. Anyhow, that's well, not the best one of those I've ever tied, but that's the process. On the bottom, you've got that nice shiny peacock curl. On the top, you've got the wing casing. Somehow I didn't end up with too many wings on this one side, but that'll catch fish. Sure there's no glue in your eye. And we're on to the next. So let's all get a hook set in the vise. You want to start with your larger. You should have 2 10s and a 12. So the 2 10s are the larger ones. Let's get our thread started. Right back to the bend of the hook. And we'll make sure everybody's there before we move on.
Looks like we're there.
All right, I'm going to do this one a little differently. I'm going to set the wire in first. We're going to tie that to about the middle of the hook. And I like to set it on top of the hook. And it doesn't really matter which side. It's probably going to end up on the far side of the hook would be better. We're going to leave our thread right at the back. This time we're going to try to use one group of feathers for both the tail and the body. Let's go ahead and do that.
I think everybody's ready, Bob.
All right. Then we'll take our pheasant tail. We will peel a group of feathers down to the side of the stem so that the tips line up. And we'll pinch that and we'll peel it down towards the base of that stem. And we're going to set this here. Again, that tail should be about half the length of your hook. You're going to hold that wire in place with it, hold everything right in place there. We're just going to give that a loose wrap, pull it tight. 2, let's just give that 3 wraps right there. And then lift it up and move your thread ahead to the middle. That's your tail. Let's go ahead and do that. Don't put too much thread on that tail because we're going to start wrapping this forward and we want that to wrap right at the tail like you see there. 3 wraps ought to do it.
Think you're good to go, Bob.
Thank you, Mike. So then we will start wrapping this body. Try to keep the group of fibers together. And again, I like to put my finger on top, especially as these get shorter. That really holds them together well. And on top, wrap that thread over there. Cinch that down well, and that should be covering about half of that hook shank. We'll cut those off on top. Go ahead and do that.
And when you're wrapping them, don't twist them. Kind of keep combing them flat. So it's laying flat as you're wrapping. You hold it and wind it, it twists them up.
All right, moving on then. We're now going to wrap. We're going to wrap this wire. Guess I'd said you can go a counter wrap. So, you know, I find when I do these for myself, I usually just wrap it the same direction as the other fibers, to be honest with you, because you're doing these traveling wraps. So you're still crossing over 3 or 4 wraps of the pheasant tail fiber with each wrap of this. And so I find that either way is probably just fine. But we'll wrap it counter to everything else and cut that on top. So it's on to our wing casing. I'm going to take these off the shorter side of this feather. You can see there's one, maybe you can't see too well from there. Let's try this angle. So that's really the long side of the feather there. And this is the slightly shorter side. Still pretty long on this nice feather I have here, but we'll switch back to the other camera. We'll pull, I like about 8 of these. You end up with, 4 on each side, hopefully. Pull them out to the side of the stem of the feather so that they line up at the tips here. Grab them, pull them down towards the base. We want to lay these in here. Just about the same length as our tail. And if you guys struggle with this method of folding the wing case over and folding it back for the legs, you can always, that's going to be a little short. You can always make a wing casing, then use new fibers for the legs. Some people can tie these all with one bunch of fibers, but on this number 10 hook, I think that would be difficult. You'd need
You
some
can
really
also
long.
put, oh, I'm sorry.
I was
You can
gonna say you
also
need-
put the ends out, oh, excuse me.
Go ahead, Mike.
You can also put the ends out of the front of the hook and then fold them back after you make the wing case.
Oh. Well, that's a good thought.
It's a little easier to measure them for me anyway.
Yeah. Like I was saying, that was the hardest part about the way I was doing it. So let's try that. I'll show you what Mike's talking about. Oh, that clump's getting a little mangled, so I'm going to try a new clump here. Take about 8 of those out to the side, down to the base. So what Mike is saying is, why don't we just stick these out off the front?
Yeah, you lose a little on the wing case, but it's easier to measure those.
Yeah. So we'll set those there. That's at a length to where they will come back towards the bend of the hook like so. Or towards the point of the hook, excuse me. These are going to end up folded
Right.
back like that. And we're going to wrap our thread over that all the way back. We can add in our peacock curl as well. I will do that next. So let's just wrap this back to about the middle of the hook. And this is going to determine where your body stops and the thorax begins. So let's set our thread right there where we want it in the middle of the hook. Let's do that.
Yeah, I think we're ready, Bob.
Excellent, thank you. So onto our peacock curl. Maybe 4 of these for this size hook. All right. So there's 4. I'm going to line up these natural ends. That would be away from the bird. roughly at least. I'm going to break off that last inch or so of the real delicate tips. And we're going to be into the good stuff. Again, this is where you're going to have that nice green. And the other end, though, the white tips, it would be attached to the feather. You know, you just don't see that same shine. It's a lot thinner, a lot less of it, a lot more black there. So we're going to use that nice green stuff. And again, I'm going to let this stick way out the front while I put that first loose wrap on. I'm going to pull it back right to there. That makes it very easy to get it anchored onto the fly. So we're going to hold that along with our pheasant tail fibers and give it all a few good wraps right back to that middle of the hook.
You forgot my trick. Just
Oh,
leave your thread back there.
yes. Thanks, Mike. Here's Mike's
Welcome.
trick. Do we want to do that step first, or you want to wrap it? Let's do that step first. Let's just get it ready.
Okay, looks like we're ready,
Yep.
Bob.
All right. So if we leave our fly there at the start of where we're going to wrap, we
Leave
know.
the thread. Leave the thread.
Sorry, yeah, leave the thread there. What did I say? The fly? Leave the thread there at the middle of the fly where we're going to start our wrap, and pass your peacock curl fibers behind it as you go. And I'm going to
You
push
gotta
that.
push.
I'm going to push that thread along by wrapping behind it, but it's going to keep this peacock curl really nicely stacked together. And I'm going to stop right there. And I'm going to pick that thread up and see now the thread was already up at the eye of the hook where I want to tie this off, even though it started back at the middle of the hook. So get that tied in there nice and tight, and let's do that step. Let's not overcrowd this eye. Stop a little short. And let's not put too many thread wraps either. We're going to put more thread wraps right here in the same spot in just a second. And then a few more and a few more. I think all these last few steps are going to stack a bunch of thread in the same spot. So the point is, let's not put too much thread yet. Just a couple wraps each time.
This is a fly you want to have in your box. This is a
Oh.
good.
Yes, it's an excellent fly. And actually, it's better in smaller sizes, 14, 16s, 18s. It's much more like a mayfly. I'll have to teach Nicole how to edit these. All right,
Okay,
Bob,
Bob.
I think we're good to go.
Okay. A lot of cameras froze on me. Maybe now they're coming back. All right. So our next step is to bend that wing casing over, and it's just going to lay right down the top of the hook in a group like so. Hold it there in your right hand. Drop that thread over with your left. Give that about 3 wraps. I like to bend that back once too, and maybe another wrap there. That's going to make it easier to cut it off clean. Go ahead and do that step.
Also, by bending it back and then doing a couple wraps with your right hand. If you're right-handed, you can generally get it a little bit tighter and firmer that way.
Okay, Bob.
All righty. So now we're going to split these fibers that are facing forward. Half of them towards you and down a little bit. Come on. Don't want to cooperate. There we go. Anyhow, the other half kind of away from you and down towards that point of the fly a little bit. Couple more wraps. No, they're not going the right direction for me. You want to try to hold them onto the side of the hook where you want them to end up. These just don't want to cooperate.
Wait till he's done, folks, so you can see any solutions to some of his problems he might have.
Now that's a little better. You can go ahead and do that. You should end up with a couple on each side. Oh, they're still kind of all on the one side for me. Anyhow, you can whip finish there.